settle in, and we're going to get started with the meeting. Are we broadcasting as well, Manju? We're broadcasting? Are we public? Thank you. So welcome everyone to our Program and School Services Committee meeting this evening, January 24th. I'm Deborah Williams, trustee and chair of this PSSC committee, here with my fellow trustee, Trustee King, as vice chair of this committee. Just checking that we do have quorum to proceed with the meeting, and I'm getting the nod from staff. Thank you. So I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we are going to begin with our TDSB land acknowledgement. If everyone who's able, please stand. We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Could you please be seated? So if I could have a mover and a seconder for approval of the agenda, and before doing that, I just want to note that the item at 5.1, we've received a request. The co-chair of that community advisory committee will not be able to join us until around 6 p.m. So it's being requested that that item be moved later in the agenda. If we could have a mover and a seconder for that agenda as amended. So moved by Trustee King, seconded by Trustee Cherno-Slin. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest in the room or online? Seeing none, we'll proceed. The next item is delegations. We do have a written delegation that was submitted from the elementary teachers of Toronto, and that will be shared with all trustees. I just wanted to make note of that delegation, that written submission that was received. We're going to move on into the agenda, the Community Advisory Committee reports, Special Education Advisory Committee report of January 15th, 2024. Do we have someone speaking to this report? Yes.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This is a report simply asking for membership for our SEAC members to be updated, and you will see new nominees that were approved by SEAC, so coming for committee for a request to be received, and both nominees have met the criteria for approval. Thank you.
Are there any questions with regard to this report? So we need a mover and a seconder for approval of the recommendations. Moved by Trustee Dawson, seconded by Trustee Cherno-Slin. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That carries. We're going to move on into the agenda, the staff reports, item 6.1, school year calendar 2024-2025. And who will be speaking to this item?
Through the chair, it will be Executive Superintendent Lorraine Linton. Thank you. Thank you, and through the chair. Before you is the school year calendar for the 2024-25 school year. Some of our guiding principles, as noted in the report, are Regulation 304, that the school year needs to be 194 days. We also followed a variety of other requirements from the ministry, including the selection of PA days to the set standard. One of the things we considered when looking at placing those 7 PA days is building long weekends where possible and where we have historically done that to support natural breaks for students and for parents. We also had excellent conversation with our calendar committee, and those committee members are noted in Appendix B. They provided us with strong insight, and this helped guide much of our thinking during the course of our discussions. One of the requirements that we also needed to follow was our close alignment with professional activity days with the Toronto Catholic District School Board. The reason why is as our busing is coordinated between our 2 boards, and this helps us reduce the costs, any extra costs associated with that. We also, as part of our process, checked with neighboring school boards to look at common practices and to share best thinking. If you look at the report, you'll notice that there is an allotment of 7 professional activity days for both elementary and secondary, and we have been able to share this same PA day on 4 occurrences so that elementary and secondary have the exact same PA day, and those dates are October 11th, November 15th, November 29th, and February the 14th. I just want to thank all the members of the calendar committee that worked so hard to help us in this consultation process. I also want to thank you for allowing us to share a report to date. Present with me today is Senior Officer Michelle Lawrence, Senior Managers Dave Moore, Secondary, Nick Lucas, Elementary, and Abe Nazir Zadad, Labor Relations. We are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do I have any questions in the room? Trustee Dawson?
I have a couple questions through the chair. I actually found it interesting that the secondary schools determine their own examination days. At least that was my understanding of the report. Can you explain that in a little more detail, why that is?
Thanks for the question, Trustee. The secondary schools are allotted 10 exam days. And generally, culminating, there is a requirement to ensure that that's at the end of a semester. So if you remember years ago, there were different placements of exam days. Well, typically in a semester at school, it should be the last 5 days of a semester where you're able to assess a student's learning through an examination, which is a percentage of their final grade. Thank you.
We've heard many concerns around there being no elementary PA day on the first day of school or the last day of school. In fact, that was the subject of our written delegation that we received today. And I just wondered if you could please provide information on, firstly, why that is, and second, when do teachers set up their classrooms?
Thank you for the question. And one of the things that we were required to do within the calendar committee regulations and what we try to stay within the scope of is ensuring that we are matched with the Toronto Catholic District School Board. So we don't make those decisions alone. And at the calendar committee, this was raised, and we tried to answer to the best of our ability that it was really felt that those professional learning days where the ministry requires us to fulfill particular expectations and to cover particular subjects, that we use them to the maximum during the course of the school year. One of our commitments, and we also articulated this at the calendar committee, is that we have always had creative approaches within schools from our leadership to support teachers, particularly, and it came up with a variety of classifications of employee groups through the principal to support them in the work that they do in classrooms. I'm going to just look at my team to see if I've missed anything. If you'd like to add any comments, I'd be happy to hear that at this point. Thank you, trustee.
Just in terms of classroom setup, there are, as you said, Executive Superintendent Linton, there are a variety of strategies that principals utilize to ensure that schools are ready to open on the first day of school. A simple example would be classroom maps, that teachers on the last day leave maps for caretaking to set their classrooms up. So physically, furniture is in the correct location. And there are many other strategies that principals implement. Ideally, classrooms, and I'm speaking specifically to elementary, do start off as blank slates because they're co-created by students and educators in that space. We've moved away from pre-made posters and materials. It's very much student-centered, student-created information that would be going up on the walls, the environment being a third teacher. And other strategies are implemented as well to support the setup of classrooms throughout the year.
And just to add additionally, through the chair, what our alignment with the Toronto Catholic District School Board is around the cost of busing. So when the routes are developed, they're developed in collaboration with each of the schools, regions, and spaces. And so one of the reasons why it is important for us to align with the Toronto Catholic District School Board is to reduce costs in the busing area. And so if we were not to be aligned, there would be additional costs associated with that. And that is something also that we did share at the calendar committee. I know that Executive Officer Snyder is online and he may be able to speak to that as well, but I just wanted to provide a more wholesome part of the answer to your question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Through the chair, I don't know one teacher who does not go into school the week before school. Like that just does not happen. You don't show up. I find it very hard to believe that you just show up on the first day without having ever stepped foot into your classroom. So I'm just putting that out there. I don't believe that's a thing. And secondly, when we say that we work with the Catholic Board, it seems to me that we're following the Catholic Board and that it's not necessarily, I mean, we said this last year, we're so much bigger of a board. Why don't we have more sway? Like, why are we just abiding by what the Catholic Board is doing? Or is that even what you're saying?
Thank you for the question. I'll just try to clarify through the chair. We work collaboratively because we're both aligned in this area. That's one of the requirements from the minister. The memo is that we have alignment in those areas. So we really do try to have conversations about best placement of PA days for the benefit that we've heard from our calendar committee, and then we interact with the Toronto Catholic, and they're very forthcoming with where their challenges may be and how they would like us to work collaboratively. So it really is a collaborative venture. It's not about one of us necessarily leading or not, but there's definitely some push and pull factors on both sides. Thank you. I think there's something else.
Okay, thanks. So I think there are probably, sorry, through the chair, a number of teachers and definitely union reps listening tonight. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on the ministry and school board mandated PA days and what has to all be covered, which makes it difficult for there to be a PA day at the start and end of school.
Thank you. I'm going to ask System Officer Michelle Lawrence to begin.
Through the chair, there are 7 PA days and 3 are for professional learning. So they're mandated professional learning, and I know that we have Superintendent Elizabeth Otto in the room who is responsible. She oversees the portfolio of professional learning. there's a long list of ministry priorities that we need to address, as well as board priorities. And these would also include new initiatives. As an example, there's a new literacy curriculum. And when something new launches, so curriculum, technology, we use PowerSchool now for reporting, time must be provided for teachers. So there are 3 days for the entire school year. One of those 3 days is held by the Federation. We call it Federation Day, and they will have professional learning workshops, presenters for teachers, which means that there are 2 days left for all of those priorities. And of those 2 days, half a day is for compliance training, which teachers participate in, all staff participate in online, which means that there is 1.5 days for the entire school year for ministry, board professional learning, and any new initiatives. We also know that the cost for occasional teaching for 1 day, so if we were to give every teacher 1 day of release to provide professional learning, it's $2.75 million. So that's professional learning. There are 4 other days, 4 other PA days left from the 7. 2 are in the collective agreement for elementary teachers, and they are for reporting and assessment, so for teachers to write report cards. There's 2. There's 1 in January for the Term 1 report card, and there's 1 in June for the Term 2 report card. So those are contractual. We do not have the ability to change those outside of a local bargaining process, which we're presently at that stage with ETT. The remaining 2 days, we as a board have allotted to reporting to parents. We have a date in November, which it's the progress report, where we try to communicate with parents early around what challenges there may be, what next steps we need to put in place, and how we can work in partnership early on with parents. So that's November. And then we have another day for reporting, and it's at the end of Term 1, and we attach it to Family Day. So this year, it's just, I think, February 17th? 14th, thank you, Valentine's Day, yes. So that date is another date that we provide for reporting to parents. So those are the 2 days that we have to flexibility with, to work with. And so to change those 2 dates, it would require an extensive consultation process with PIAC and such. But those are the 4 days. So 2 are contractually in the collective agreement, and 2 have been determined by the board that we report to parents. And again, just for elementary.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, I think when you explain it so comprehensively that way, nobody could argue that a day and a half for PD that we have all decided as a board is necessary is still grossly inadequate. So I am more of a fan of the calendar now. Can you explain staff meetings and whether they're mandatory and what takes place during staff meetings in terms of PD?
Thank you for the chair, and thank you for the question. And through the chair, I'd like to ask Senior Manager Nick Lucas to begin this answer. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. Staff meetings are a collective agreement. Part of our collective agreement, we are allowed 1 staff meeting up to 75 minutes per month. And the staff meeting is a collection of both professional development. An example of that would be the school improvement plan. So working through the school improvement plan with teachers. Another example would be pressing issues like going through the suicide prevention protocol and other work like that, as well as the day-to-day operational needs of the building that the principals would need sort out things like duty schedules and making sure everybody's on the right page for safety in the building. So they are once a month. The collective agreement language is that teachers are expected to attend those meetings, and schools have those meetings. They book those meetings collaboratively at the front end of the year with their staff. Some schools will do them after school. Some schools will do them at lunch.
Thank you, very helpful. Those are my questions.
Thank you, and thank you for those responses as well. The next speaker is Trustee King.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a question for staff regarding the 2 elementary PA days in November. They fall 2 weeks apart, and I'm just curious to know if this is something that staff has heard feedback on before. Does it present a concern for families? Is it something that we typically do? Is it something that maybe was unavoidable this time? I'm just looking for any comment there.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, I'm going to begin, and then I'm going to pass over to System Officer Michelle Lawrence. This year, when we put the calendar together, we always look at the achievement dates and where they fall. And in this particular incident, in the end of November, because that's the dates that you're referring to are November 15th, I believe, and November 29th, that are 2 weeks apart. Generally, that 29th happens 5 days later, is really when it happens. But this year, there were some system initiatives that were at tension with that date, and we felt it was better in order to move it ahead so that we didn't have the impact of that first week of December, where many of our employees would have been absent, to reduce the absences. And so that's one of the considerations associated with that. Thank you.
Okay, so through the chair, just to further add to that, we look at the number of days of straight instruction, and then we look where it's best to put in a break. And to what Executive Superintendent Linton referenced, there is a conference that's scheduled that first week of December, and it was unavoidable. And it's through one of the associations for principals. So we couldn't put a PA day on that day because safety of students is paramount. And so knowing that principals would be away, that there was a conference happening, it was just, we had to look at competing priorities. So we moved it 1 week earlier. So it typically is a week later, but it was just because of what was happening in terms of other priorities. So for future, we don't tend to schedule them 2 weeks apart. We spread it out further.
Thank you, I appreciate the explanation.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers online? Any trustees who'd like to ask any questions? Okay, thank you. So I'd just like to end off by thanking staff, Executive Superintendent Linton and the whole team for all of the work that went into the calendar committee for the upcoming school year. And you can also see on Appendix A, page 13 of the agenda, the list of participants in that calendar committee. And the discussion I thought was very rich. I happen to be the trustee representative on the calendar committee this year, and I appreciated the space that was allowed for the participants to voice their concerns and raise issues that they had. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next, we need a mover and a seconder to approve this recommendation. So do I have a mover to recommend that the school year calendar for 2024-2025 for elementary, secondary, and quadmastered alternative schools be approved? Moved by Trustee King, seconded by Trustee Chernos-Lynn. All in favor? And say aye.
Aye. Wilka Rotman in favor.
Thank you.
And in favor.
Dawson in favor.
Those in favor.
Trustee Rajwani in favor.
No. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We'll move on to the next agenda item, the Secondary Alternative Schools Program Review Update. And who will be speaking to this?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I will begin, and then we'll be welcoming staff to go into detail. Trustees, you will remember that our Alternative Schools Community Advisory Committee made recommendations for a review of our secondary alternative schools, and the board passed a resolution in May of 2021. So before you in this report is, it's meant to be an update for you and a critical path and timeline in regards to components of that review. I invite System Superintendent Peter Chang to highlight some of its key points. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Associate Director Sarisco. And through you, Chair, thank you for this opportunity to share with you an update. And this update is very much to outline the critical path that staff intends on taking to get ourselves deeply into consultation and then writing some recommendations at the end of the period that we've indicated in the document. We have dedicated a few months over the next, starting now, to really get deeply into communicating with various stakeholders of secondary alternative schools, and those have been outlined for you in the document. Secondary alternative schools are quite unique to the Toronto District School Board, so we are learning as we go along about their strengths, their some of the challenges, and some of the opportunities that this review can show to us. So we are really looking forward to doing the work, doing the literature review, as well as, of course, connecting with various stakeholders to get information and their insights on the future of secondary alternative schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Trustee Dawson.
Thank you through the chair. I had a question about the review timing. I'm just looking at the schedule and it says that both the mid report and the final report are happening in spring 2025. I was wondering if you could just break that down a bit, if you have that info.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to Trustee Dawson. Trustee Dawson, we wanted to be a little less specific than identifying months, just because we know May and June are very, very busy for the Board of Trustees. So we will likely separate them, and if we can be pushing them back a little bit, that would be the intention. But we wanted to remain just somewhat flexible to describe the months of February through June.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense through the chair. So now Appendix A, I'm just looking at the list of schools and I don't see Oasis Skateboard Factory. I was just wondering, is that covered under, are all the Oases kind of grouped together?
Thank you, and through the chair. You are correct. Oasis Alternative School is actually quite a unique animal on itself in that there are 3 programs that constitute Oasis Alternative. And one of them is exactly it, the Skateboard Factory, Oasis Skateboard Factory, as well as a Triangle program. Both of them, plus the Oasis School of Social Change, make up together the Oasis Secondary Alternative School. That's why there's only Oasis Secondary School.
Okay, thanks. So in Appendix A, Chart B, I wonder if you could just speak to the declining enrollment and why why we think that is, and then also how that's impacted us from a resource standpoint.
Thank you, and through the chair, I may begin and invite Peter to add additional comments. Trustee Dawson, I think that is a really important question for us to be exploring as we are talking to our advisory groups, students, and staff to be understanding why that students, we are seeing a declining enrollment, what needs persist. Is it access for geography? Are we able to meet the needs of students who seek alternative programs in home schools? So I wouldn't want to speculate without elevating voice of parents, community, and students. But we will be very intrigued to be posing that question and happy to report back to you.
And through the chair, if I may add, one of the stark realities of the pandemic has been that we have noticed significant reduction in students who are engaged in our secondary alternative schools. Some may have made choices to attend the virtual school if they feel that a comprehensive school setting might not be the best choice for them right now. And many of the students in some of our alternative schools are vulnerable for many different reasons. And so we are regularly in touch with some of the non-attenders and trying to really encourage them to come back. But these numbers that you see are reflective of some of the reasons why I think the ASAC has tasked us to look into and do a program review. So hopefully for the future and vision of secondary alternative schools in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. One of the challenges that I've had as a trustee is just explaining to families the funding model and how the per pupil funding applies to a smaller school like this. And I was wondering if you could break that down a little bit in terms of why some of our alternative secondary schools might feel under-resourced and how that ties to funding.
Through the chair, I will do my very best to do that. The way in which secondary alternative schools are staffed is very similar to the way in which all schools are staffed in the TDSB. Enrollment is a primary driver that dictates how many staff members are going to be allocated to schools. Over the past few years during my time, and I know that it has happened in the past before me, the TDSB has granted supplementary staff to support the program viability of all of the secondary alternative schools. That allows for a minimum number of teachers that work in schools to offer a reasonable amount of courses for students who are in our schools. But overall, when it comes down to the way in which we're staffed, secondary alternative schools are staffed very similarly to all other schools in the TDSB.
Okay, thank you. And then last question. Will budget be a part of this review? Like if it's determined that you need more resources, just speculating, would that come into play anywhere in our budget process?
Thank you, and through the chair to Trustee Dawson. I think your question, Trustee Dawson, in how our secondary alternative schools are staffed, how funds are generated per pupil based on ministry funding formula is going to be an important component to be building shared understanding with the public, with our community advisories, as well as the Board of Trustees, so that we can understand the challenges in providing numbers of courses for what typically are very small secondary schools and recommendations in regard to that. So we'll be sure to provide fulsome details.
Okay, thanks. I think, my question was more related to spec ed funding because our alternative secondary schools, at least mine, have variety of students with diverse needs, potentially more so than at least my regular stream secondary schools. So how does that come into play? Like, don't we have, yeah, how does that come into play? Spec ed needs.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair. I think that is going to, again, be an important component of the review in understanding that boards of education are staffed, or sorry, receive funding based on enrollment. And it is up to the board to be determining how the program supports and services are provided to students that have registered. So in regards to alternative programs, that needs to be factored into when we support schools with special education staff, and the modality for that. So in answer to your question, there are not unique funds for alternative schools. It's part of the larger special education grant that has 7 components, and it's up to us to determine how we spread that and make sure that all of our students are well supported.
And through the chair, if I may, all of the 21 secondary alternative schools do receive special education support through the services of an itinerant resource teacher, who we affectionately call the IRT. They do work in multiple schools, which is why they're called itinerant. And they spend time with students and staff to ensure that the needs of students are being met to the best of their ability with given the time that they have in the students, the many students that we do have in our schools.
Okay, thanks. I just thought of one more question, so sorry. Do we know or do we track how many students transition from safe and caring schools into alternative secondary schools?
Through the chair, at this moment, we do not. And part of the reason why is because we are tracking, we're tracking conversations we've had with schools to see where the students are coming from in general. But we are not in any way pinpointing certain populations of students. We do have curiosity around where they're coming from, why they might be coming, also why some of our students choose not to stay with us. So our schools are trying to collect that data, but we're also quite sensitive to the needs of our students. Where we feel like it's not appropriate, we won't necessarily engage in that conversation. We're just opening our arms and our hearts and welcoming them into our schools.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions, and thank you, staff, for the responses. The next speaker is Trustee Arts.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. My headset's a bit wonky, so let me know if it's a problem. Thank you to staff for the update. The snapshot of schools is very helpful. I knew that that utilization rates were low in some schools, but I actually didn't realize how big of a problem it is. Because as you know, I only have the one alternative secondary school, and it has always operated way over capacity. So I'd be interested to know why that one seems to attract so many students. I know that the approach is different from other schools, or who they and the students that are served there. But I think that would be good to understand. Trustee Dawson asked most of my questions, but one I still had, Superintendent Chang, you mentioned that some students may have left the alternative school pathway to move online. So is the intention to also survey the students and families that have opted for virtual to find out whether they had been in an alternative school, why they're enrolled virtually?
Through the chair?
Yes,
Thank you. I apologize if I misspoke about that. My recollection in conversations with our secondary alternative school staff is when students choose to come to our schools, they come because they want the in-person experience and opportunity to be in a small school setting. Prior to the school start, students may choose to go to virtual before they come to us. Most of the time, once they come to us, they really enjoy being in that smaller school setting. And so I'm not aware of many students that go to virtual from secondary alternative school.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would, yeah. I think looking at the profile of schools, they're definitely something needs to shift in terms of what's happening. Some of them, the enrollment is extremely low based on compared to the capacity. And I do know that some of them are very close to each other, also in terms of geography. So thank you for this, and I'm looking forward to more information.
Thank you, Trustee Arts, and thank you to staff for the responses. The next speaker is Trustee Chernoslin.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for this report. My comment is really just, it's just a bit of a cheerleading response in the sense that I'm really happy to get an update on this, to see the timeline of it, which is, there's a lot of work to do in it, but I'm really excited about the prospect going forward because we know how important alternative secondary schools are to our students. We've heard that loud and clear from so many of them, and that they do serve such an important function. And I think it's incumbent upon them, we hear from them every year about the challenges in terms of staffing. And when we see the numbers here, we have to figure out how we can find creative solutions to make sure that we are addressing concerns we hear year after year, but doing it in a way that we can, that works into our financial situation, which is unfortunately always challenging. And so I think this is going to take creativity, and I'm excited about that. And I'm also excited and hopeful that we will address another concern through this, which is equity of access. Because when you look at the maps, and you can see historically, because of pre-amalgamation focus of different boards, that they're not everywhere, they're not equally distributed, and so I hope that will also be addressed, and I understand, I think that is part of the goal with this. So I'm excited that we're getting into this. We've been talking about this and these, for so long, and I'm excited to see steps come, moving through this, and to have really a roadmap to the future, to where we will get to a better place. So I look forward to that, and thank you for your work, and look forward to where we go with this in the future.
Thank you. The next speaker, Trustee King.
Thank you, through you, Chair. A couple of questions for staff regarding the consultation process. So within the list of stakeholders, I was happy to see that alumni are listed among the groups that would be consulted with. I'm just curious to know, are we relying on alumni to know about the consultation process through all our usual channels, or do we maintain a relationship where we're able to reach out to them? I'm just curious what that looks like.
Thank you, and through the chair, that is a really, really good question. A question I think we're still trying to figure out, to be honest, Trustee King. that was one of the things that came about when we had some preliminary talks with students and staff. They really wanted us to hear from alumni because they had the experience of perhaps a secondary alternative school a decade ago, and maybe it may not be the same as it is now. So that's why we want to take our time and find out how we can reach them, because some schools do keep a really tight network. Some of the schools that have been around a long, long time, other schools may not. And so we're just trying to understand by talking to staff and some current students, how can we reach out to as many of them as possible? And this is why we pointed it out in our timeline to recognize that alumni are important voices. We are just trying to understand how to best do that systematically.
Thank you for that. And then second question, on that list, we also see a number of the groups that the institution works very closely with. So whether that's federations, CACs, parent and family. When I think about the student population for alternative schools, we know that they often have different academic or social needs. We know that they have different experiences that might bring them in touch with things like youth justice or housing insecurity or mental health issues. And I'm wondering if there's any point in this work or consultation where we are engaging professional associations or folks that have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the city with these issues, so that we are also thinking about how our programs align and meet what's happening in a really timely fashion in the city for students and for families.
Thank you, and through the chair, I think that's a really powerful idea and something that we can be incorporating in the consultation process, and also to be partnering in the ideation and the reflection of what the review is telling us for a new approach or new enhancements, refinements to our alternative schools.
Thank you. I appreciate that consideration.
Thank you. It looks like we're at the end of the speakers list. So I'll need a mover and a seconder for recommendation that the Secondary Alternative School Program Review Update Report be received. Moved by Trustee Dawson, seconded by Trustee Chernos Lynn, and I believe eScribe is coming up. If you cast your vote on eScribe.
Volker Rodman in favor.
Shani in favor.
Chernos Lynn in favor.
Thank you.
Trustee Rajwani in favor.
And that carries. And I just want to, again, thank staff, Associate Director Louis Shrishko and System Superintendent Peter Chan for that report. Thank you very much for all of the work that went into that. We're moving to the next agenda item, the 2023 summer programs.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Trustees, if we were not certain before, this report underscores how incredible the TDSB is and the programs that we provide our students through the summer. This is a compilation of many, many departments and the work that they do to be supporting students in a variety of means, to be extending, enhancing, supporting continued learning, exploration of new opportunities. It's my pleasure to invite System Superintendent Peter Chang to highlight some of the incredible work and opportunities for students in the summer gone by.
Thank you so much, Associate Director Sarisco. And through the chair, I can't help but echo exactly what Associate Director Sarisco had said. It is a celebration of many of the wonderful events that we have and opportunity for students and learners from pre-K all the way up to senior citizen ages. This year, or back in 2023 now, there were 19 distinct learning opportunities for learners across the system. And in fact, from 2022 to 2023, we had an increase of almost 6,000 students involved in all of the summer programs that you see before you. That's huge. Secondary students earned almost 19,000 credits this summer by taking e-learning, summer credit, or credit recovery courses. The Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement offered an exciting Black Student Leadership Program to nearly 100 students, culminating in the Youth Participatory Action Research Conference. And we've heard about that celebrated here on the board floor. And staff also collaborated with the Urban Indigenous Education Center to offer an Indigenous Student Leadership Program for 22 students. All of this, and I've said this before, cannot be done without the dedication and commitment of the continuing education staff, teachers, principals, and support staff who take up their time and space during the months of July and August to spend time with us. Summer 2023 was also the first time we partnered with the Jays Care Foundation so that elementary students could participate in literacy and math programs in the morning and then spend the afternoon with the Jays Care Foundation to have a full day enriching experience. So we look forward to expanding that opportunity in partnership with them for this upcoming summer. And yes, we have already started planning for this summer, although it feels a little unsummerish right now. We're very much in the depth of getting ourselves organized. Trustees, we do have several staff online who are ready to answer any questions if you like about our summer's programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that update. So in the room, I have Trustee Dawson with questions.
Thank you. First of all, I have to say this report was really a joy to read. There's just so many exciting things happening over the summer that, you know, I wasn't aware of the breadth of programming happening during the summer. So it was really amazing. And I'm so excited to hear that the Jays Care program is being explored and to expand it, because I know the schools that participated in it and some of the kids who participated in it, and it was really, 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 really well loved. So thank you so much. I have a couple of questions around, so for the spec ed programs, do we provide busing over the summer for those programs?
Through the chair, I am just looking to see if Assistant Superintendent Palmer is online with us to provide that answer, as she oversees the special education programs in the summertime.
I'm not sure our Superintendent Palmer is on the line.
She's on her way.
She's on her way, but
Okay.
the answer is yes.
We do, okay, wonderful. For international languages, do we ever take into consideration immigration trends and what languages we're offering? Like, the reason I ask is that the school my kids attend has a growing Ukrainian and Spanish-speaking population, and the kids are learning from each other. But would we ever take that into consideration when we're offering languages at schools? Communication between friends, I guess?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm going to ask centrally assigned Principal Norbert Costa to provide that answer. Norbert?
Good evening. Through the chair, we work with, we certainly look at all the opportunities that are available for summer programming through International Languages Elementary and African Heritage Program. And we work with community groups throughout the summer to identify the locations and the languages that we are able to provide. Similar to summer school, we can't duplicate what's offered during the school year, so we do our best, and when there is a need, we do our best to identify how to serve the need of those students in those communities.
Thanks. outdoor education summer camp. To be honest, this was the first time I'd read about it. Are all of the opportunities free, including the family camp?
And through the chair, we are also fortunate online to have Principal David Hawker-Balowski, who will provide that answer for us. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair. The outdoor education summer programs are on a cost recovery basis. And so there are costs to the camps, although subsidized as they are on the TDSB properties. These are summer program staff who are hired and run the programming for the camps. Thank you.
Thank you. And how do families know about them? Like, are we getting a lot of Island Public students going because they know about it? Just wondering if the Island Public students are getting the majority of the opportunities versus the general population.
Through the chair,
Actually,
to Principal Balowski. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you so much for that question. Our summer programs are available to students from across the TDSB and beyond. Communication about our programs are available through our public website, through our summer program opportunities, as well as through system messaging and system leaders and direct line to schools and school staff all across the TDSB. For the Island School and Camp Kearney, we also advertise these summer opportunities with every student who comes and visits through the year. And these are opportunities beyond the grade sixes to come and experience what these sites have to offer. For the first time, speaking of the Island Camp, we sold out 3 full weeks of the Island Camp, which is the first time that's happened in the 20 years I've been involved at the Island School, either as a staff or principal, which was really exciting. And we're looking to expand those opportunities for the coming year.
That's amazing. Thank you. What is the difference between secondary e-learning credit and secondary credit summer school?
Thank you. And through the chair, there are 2 different delivery models. The summer credit are in person or virtual, but it's synchronous. In other words, they are happening, they're learning as the teachers are engaged with them online or in person, like the way regular day school looks like. E-learning it occurs when students take a course online, but it's asynchronous, meaning that I could sign up for a course, but my learning is independent. I do touch base with the e-learning teacher every now and then, but there's a schedule built in as part of the program. But that is a distinct difference between e-learning and our summer credit programs.
Okay, that's helpful. Can you explain a little bit more about adult high school and community general interest programs and how the funding from the ministry works with respect to those? Is it the same sort of GSN per pupil formula?
The 2 programs, through the chair, adult day schools and general interest programs are come from 2 different funding sources. Adult day schools are provided through the continuing education grant, and which we facilitate, so adult learners do not pay any fees, whereas our community general interest programs are meant to be cost recovery programs. So learners are paying fees in order to participate in pottery class, in a yoga class, or perhaps even a language. You mentioned Spanish, so perhaps even like a Spanish language class. Those are meant to be cost recovery so that there is no cost to the board.
Okay, good. So I'm just a little bit concerned, like when we go to the chart, I forget which appendix it's on, but when you go to the chart about the number of students completing courses, and I think it was the general pool that was like 3,000 less than had registered, had completed the course. Why is that? Why is there such a drop in who completes the course compared to who's enrolled? And I wonder, does the switch from in-person to virtual play a role in that? Like, what are these registration numbers? Are they from before we would have informed people of virtual?
Through the chair, I think you've definitely struck one of the considerations. It's quite common that there's attrition for students who enroll in the summer credit programs. Some might register because they think perhaps they are going to not get the mark that they want during regular day school, but then find out they were okay, therefore they didn't attend. But there are students that do take the summer courses, and for various reasons, life circumstances, jobs, they might realize that doing the two might not be possible. These summer credits are 110 hours compressed in 1 month, so it's quite intense. I know that when my son, for example, took a summer course, he quite honestly didn't get the mark that he was getting, so he dropped out. So those are some of the pieces that students do consider. These are opportunities that we do give students. And there are also some students who take maybe more than one course. So that may also be the reason why there isn't a direct correlation between the number of students and the number of credits earned.
If I may, through the chair, to Trustee Dawson, in regards to your question about general interest, I just wanted to add a little bit more detail. Although in policy, it does indicate that the board should be offering general interest program as part of the definition of continuing education in policy, and that it should be cost recovery. We are experiencing a deficit of approximately $664,000. This will be a continued discussion, certainly in the months ahead. It's also important to note that this is not a funded program from the ministry.
Okay, so what you're saying is cost recovery is actually not cost recovery. Okay. All right, well, I take back that comment of it being good then. Okay, is there any correlation between dropout rate and geolocation of students? Like where the students are located in the city?
Through the chair, that is a very good question. We haven't done the data mapping to know if that's possible. We do also know, though, that since the pandemic, there is significantly more interest in virtual learning opportunities than in person. And, we continue to offer in-person sites as a start, but if there isn't enough enrollment in in-person courses, then we do have to move the classes over to virtual, simply because we can't staff without the proper funding. But that direct question, I apologize, I don't have the answer for you. We haven't been collecting that data.
Okay, I think it would be interesting to collect it, if that's something that could be considered for the future. And I think just a general comment or question. Can you kind of explain in more detail the move from in-person to virtual, when we make that decision, what factors are considered in making that decision? Because I think some of us have received the feedback about in-person offerings being preferred. And based on what you're saying, that's probably not the case across the whole city. So I just wondered what the criteria was for discontinuing an in-person or moving it online.
Through the chair. Over the past few years, since the pandemic, we've offered both delivery models, in-person and virtual. The students then enroll. Based on that information, that's how we make our decision. If there are thousands of students that enroll virtually, then that's the way we're going to offer, because that is their choice. We always begin with in the past, we started with 6 sites across the city, geographically accessible for students. And we are encouraging in every way to have students enroll in person. Sometimes we barely get 200 students in a school, and therefore it just isn't possible for us to maintain an in-person presence. And this is why we have to make the decision to cancel the in-person class and encourage the students to take virtual. And that's the unfortunate circumstance of the fact that our funding also has to be appropriately adjusted to offer in-person if possible.
Okay, thanks. Through the chair. Yeah, I think it would be interesting to track the dropout rate at the time that you make the announcement that it's transitioning to virtual. That would be of interest anyway to me. And I know I've got like 0 seconds left, but I just wanted to give a very quick shout out to the Black Student Summer Leadership Program. It was amazing. I had the opportunity to go to the Youth Participatory Action Research Conference, where our student trustee, Angelica Bell, made a very compelling speech. And the food was excellent. The presentations were amazing. I was just blown away by that event and the program itself. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to the staff involved with that. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. The next speaker is Trustee Arts.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So again, I got to get my name in before Alexis if I want to ask questions, apparently. Trustee Dawson asked a lot of my questions. That's very good. So thank you for this report. It's actually great to see all the different types of programs in one place. It is very impressive. I will just comment on the summer high school thing. I do know that the format, the very intensive I do know, I've heard from lots of families who don't opt for it because the every day, all day for at least a month. Sometimes by the time kids realize they might want to take a summer course, families will have made summer plans and booked, and that just doesn't work to be there in person. So I know that the online pieces are more flexible for those families. Like you've sunk money into something like a trip or a rental that you don't want to then lose money on it. Anyway, it is quite intense. My question, I think staff is aware of some things happening in my area in terms of feedback. Actually, I have 2 questions. The first one's maybe more straightforward, was about essentially collective learning from the previous year's programming and what we might be changing. Will we be getting a report on like later in the spring on what's coming for summer 2024?
Thank you, and through you. This is an annual report, Trustee Arts, of a historic view of what happens in the summer. Having said that, however, as we mentioned in regards to the multi-year strategic plan and the key performance indicators, you can certainly be looking forward to action plans that are operational to be supporting the best outcomes possible for all students that will invariably include summer programs. So we'll be embedding those initiatives within the reporting cycle that will be developed.
Okay, that's great, because the report as a perspective look at the programs was great, but I was really, with that sort of overview, a lot of my questions were like, so what did we learn? Like, what are we going to keep and what are we going to change? Those were some questions that came up, because I know that things like Jay's Care, it's great that they were in our schools this past year. I heard really good feedback about that, but I know that they shift annually where they sink their money in terms of programming that they support. So I'm going to assume that that's not necessarily going to go ahead for the coming summer. And on that note, I think staff knows some of the complaints that I got were about the difference in types of programming offered across different groups of students. In that, with the J's Care funding, we were able to have some programming that was full day. While it was not full day school, it was a full day program as opposed to the former half day education programs. But this did not, the J's Care program didn't extend to special education students. And then I know that the different programs are all administered under different departments. And so there isn't necessarily, or there hasn't necessarily been crosstalk in terms of aligning the programming, but that has meant that processes can be different in application deadlines, information going out, things like that. And so that was a source of complaint as well. So I'm wondering if there's been learning that way, which will help us maybe align programs for the coming year.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to Trustee Arts. Thank you for raising those concerns, Trustee Arts, and certainly in planning with our special education department and looking at the summer programs that are offered. What became apparent as far as some timelines that for special education programs that are not the same for other summer school offerings, particularly credit offerings for secondary students. The timelines need to be slightly different because of the planning that is required to ensure staffing, location, identification. Having said that, we are absolutely communicating with each other and doing what we can to communicate the why and to do any alignment that is possible. Providing special education sites and support is a bit, as you can imagine, other factors need to be considered in the planning. As well, we are wanting to be paying assiduous attention and communicating opportunities for our families who have students with disabilities or special education needs in regards to community partners that offer program offerings in the afternoon that enable our students to be not necessarily in an academic setting and enjoy other opportunities that summer do provide. So that the J's Care, as an example, the municipality of Toronto does offer quite an extensive array of programs for children with disabilities and special education needs. So we are thinking about how we can broadly communicate that to be in support of our families. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it would also be helpful to where there are differences, where there's going to be differences that we can't avoid, that we can communicate those in advance. Maybe as posted Q&A or something like that, that families are aware that it's not an oversight, and it's not, it is because there's different requirements in terms of planning the programming. I know that our summer programs, especially for special education, are highly valued. I know from experience with families in my area, not necessarily reporting through my schools, but just in terms of the experiences when you have a child who could attend a privately offered or like a city-based program, but would need additional staffing. There are very few private programs that do that, and unlike us, some of those programs simply refuse to take kids, or kick them out midweek when there's struggles, which is really unfortunate. So I don't know how we maybe bring this to the attention of the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of CCS, Children's and Community Services, that there's so few resources for students who have behavioral challenges, students who have special needs, who need a little bit of more attention. So few spaces for them in partner programs. There's so few community programs. The wait lists are huge. We are keenly positioned to support families all year round if we had that kind of funding, and the supports from different levels of government to make that happen. I think those summer programs are lifesavers for a lot of families, and I would like to know better how to support them, and if at all possible, have us offer more and have that supported by, properly supported by government.
Thank you. Those were comments. Didn't sound like a question. And thank you for those comments and those observations, Trustee Arts. The next speaker on the list, Trustee McLean.
Thank you, and through the chair, I want to join in those who have, thanked staff and everyone in the team that works to provide these programs and this programming to students and families throughout our system. I've had many families different programming reach out and say how important and how much they enjoyed them, and how it played an important role. So I just wanted to share that and thank staff. I do have a question about how well we advertise and whatnot. And it was mentioned that it is on our website and a public site that people are able to see and gather that information, and that's great. But I often get told that the problem with our site isn't that the information isn't on it, is that anything we've ever discussed is on it, and it's difficult to find things sometimes. And as someone who's technically challenged, I can test that. So I'd like to know if do we send out reminders in things like TDSB Connects? Do we ask principals in their newsletters to make notifications so that school communities are aware of this great programming?
Through the chair, speaking on behalf of the continuing education learning opportunities, I know that we work very closely with the local principals, because they're the ones who have direct contact with families to encourage students to consider some of the summer school experiences. But definitely there are there are communications that are sent out through through TDSB Connects and through the website to ensure that everybody is aware. Similar to the way we were promoting some of our other central programs, we have the time and we have the principals and the teachers who are in these schools who are going to hold some of the summer school programs, the chance to communicate and encourage as many students as possible. So we do use as many different forms of media to connect with families. We don't necessarily do the paper media anymore, but we do use School Messenger, TDSB Connects, and other forms of school newsletters to promote some of these programs prior to registration, because we're trying to encourage as much registration as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Trustee McLean, we can be making sure that we do summary and trustee weekly so that you are able to include that reminder in your newsletters, as I know many of you do publish. And if we can get our offerings out as broadly as possible, that would be appreciated for you to pass it on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. My next question concerns Focus on Youth. Throughout my time on the board, Focus on Youth has been a very valuable program and an opportunity for students. Can you please, and my time on community use of schools, there's lots of nonprofits who benefit from having the programming and having their staff work, and quite often can't operate without the benefit of having students funded through this program. But we've always had a hard time in terms of the government funding and getting it earlier enough. So can you please remind me the status of the funding on the province, and whether it's in place or whether we're currently advocating for it, or seems to be something I should know, and I've been told, but when I read this, I couldn't remember, so I thought I would take the opportunity to ask today.
Thank you, and through the chair, we're very optimistic that this year we should be receiving the same funding as we received last year to support the Focus on Youth program in Toronto. Last year, I believe we received approximately just over $3 million to provide employment opportunities for students who meet the criteria of the Focus on Youth program. And so we're very optimistic. We're hearing good news. It hasn't landed in our wallets yet to work through all of that, but it is January, almost February. So we're getting into a better place where our the funding is coming sooner. That allows us as staff to spend more time to work with some of our community partners so that they can participate and have some of our Focus on Youth students working in their community agencies. I will note, Trustee McLean, that the community organizations that work with us, they are aware that our Focus on Youth students are meant to be an addition to the programs that they run and support them. The Focus on Youth students are not meant to be the sole source of the programs that they run in the summer. And that's an important message that we have been communicating with our partners so that they're aware, because despite the fact that we get that amount of money, it's never going to be enough to support all the students and programs that the students deserve to have. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's informative for me. So I do think it's important to share broadly with the agencies that try to use the programming. And while I'm certainly encouraged by your optimistic sense, and I'll have to trust on that, but I would encourage us to continue to advocate it. It's incredibly important funding. Students benefit in a tremendous way. And while I know that the government is aware, because I've had meetings with I haven't had very many meetings with my member of provincial parliament, but I have met with her regarding this. And while there was how important the work was, and it hasn't translated into an earlier announcement of funding so that we could have everything in place. So I hope your optimism is well placed. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee McLean, and thank you to staff for those responses. The next speaker on the list is Trustee King.
Thank you, Chair. To staff, I was also really pleased to see the report and just the breadth and the range of programming that's available through the summer. I also did a look back to the report we received at this time last year, and it's great to see that in all cases, there's either stable or increased enrollment through the program. So really, really wonderful to see, and I appreciate the work that staff did in my ward specifically. When we did have challenges, you worked really hard to make sure community was engaged and you were able to provide the programs that were desired, including the Jays Care program, so thank you for that. My questions are around the Summer Music and Arts program, and I'm really trying to understand just some of the rationale and the goals around this program. I'll share with you just some of my thinking because there's a lot of different information that came to mind for me that I'm trying to connect and figure out how this responds to it. So I have a few different situations in my ward. I have a portion of my ward where there are very long-standing residents who remember the times where we had really fully funded music programs and are, lamenting the loss of that, over the decades. I have a side of my ward where there is an abundance of private music schools and opportunities available. Another side of my ward where there is none. We know that we are wanting our students to have exposure to the arts. We know that we want them to have opportunities to just pursue interests, investigate, find out where they have passions. And then I also see that this camp is fee-based. That fee is a bargain if you are used to paying market prices for summer camp programs. That fee amount is high if you're economically challenged and don't have access to those kinds of programs otherwise. A couple other things, I notice these programs are aimed at grade 3 to 8, but they also ask for having a year of music experience prior. So I question that when we're thinking about the younger grades. And there's been a significant increase of all the programs. This is one where we saw a huge jump from 166 last year to 257 this year. So that tells me there's some popularity, there's some interest, there's some success here, but I'm still not quite understanding kind of what the purpose is, who we're trying to target, what we're trying to achieve, how locations are selected. So if you can just talk a little bit more about the thinking and the objective behind this program, that would be great to start. And then I have 2 more questions.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm going to ask centrally assigned Principal Norbert Costa to provide some perspective, and because I think those are really important questions that we need to address.
So through the chair, thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. The Summer Music and Arts Camp opportunities, while in the past may have had some funding from central TDSB, for these programs, there is no funding for them. Therefore, that's the rationale similar to our outdoor education camps. It's all cost recovery. So that's what we're working on in providing those opportunities. They also vary in location. For example, we have one that's an overnight opportunity that's very distinctly different than the one that we might have at Wexford, which is a in-person programming. And they typically are 5 days in length. The overnight camp is actually 6 days to provide an opportunity for further development. And then what we have worked on, although limited, we are working on providing where we can some subsidy for some of the camps, but it's very limited. And we also, although it is asking for students with experience, we do accept students with no experience into our camps, and we've made that intentional as well. And for example, with our overnight camp, although it says with experience, we do provide one of the weeks of that opportunity where students who may be interested, have no experience, the opportunity to attend the camp if they have no experience with music. So that's part of it, and we've also added within it, because there are also recreational opportunities within and to use the site, like for example the one at Mono Cliffs. There's a wonderful opportunity to integrate some of the facilities and the opportunities there as well. So again, to sum up, there is a cost, and that's we base it on a cost recovery opportunity, and that's how the tuition is set.
Thank you for that, Mr. Costa. If I'm hearing correctly, I think what I'm hearing is that there's not necessarily a specific intention or target with this program. For lack of a better word, it's a bit more of a catch-all of it's offered, and we're trying to make sure it's accessible to all different situations and types of students. And maybe
there is a wide range, and you are
a long time. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, second question. So understanding it's set up to be cost recovery, is it actually operating as cost recovery, or is this a similar situation as we heard earlier?
No, this is definitely cost recovery.
Okay.
And we only operate the programs where there's enough enrollment, where there is, and thankfully, as we continue to build and grow the program over the last 2 years, the enrollment has continued to match and the cost recovery. So there is no overrun on it.
Excellent. And then my last question is just around equity, and you spoke to this earlier, that there are some subsidies available, though they're limited. I'll just comment that from personal experience, it wasn't easy to access this information, and the option wasn't available at the time of registration. So I would encourage staff to just continue to explore how that's offered in a way that's not stigmatizing for families, that they don't have to, put up their hand or lose the opportunity because of the time between registration and when that gets sorted out. I think just the more proactive that we can be in taking the burden off families will ensure that more students have access. Thank you.
And through the chair, thank you very much for that feedback. We will take that back there and definitely look into it thoroughly.
Thank you. And do we have any other questions? Any trustees online who'd like to ask any questions? Okay. Oh, I see Trustee Hastings in the room. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question to the superintendent, and it has, and excuse me for not belonging to this group, I'm just here to. But anyway, we have schools in our neighborhood, and there was a school because there was no superintendent, sorry, there was no principal, vice principal. One was off sick and one was off on whatever. And we have summer school that comes to this school. I'm gonna have to get you the name later, but I would like to see that school, which hosted summer school, be hosting again, because you moved it from that school. You said there was no one there to vouch for whether or not there should be summer school there, but there's always been summer school at that school. And it's in Ward 1. and it's up in the top left-hand corner of the map. If I get you the name, can we please reverse that which was or reversed or made permanent? Can we get that school back to running summer school? Because that's where everybody went for years and years and years. And then one year, last year, it changed because there was nobody there to say, let's have summer school. Now I'm asking, can we have the summer school back at that school?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Hastings. To staff.
Thank you. And through the chair, thank you, Trustee Hastings, for bringing that to our attention. When it comes to the selection of the elementary summer school sites for the summer, there are several factors that play into the final decision. One of the starting points is that we do ask the principals or vice principals in their schools if they're interested in holding summer school. Because we, as I was saying earlier, one of the ways in which we get a really wonderful turnout it happens when the principal is encouraging the students to attend and really be that strong voice and presence to encourage even some of the neighboring schools to attend. So that's a starting point for that decision-making process. And then we look at the distribution of the summer school sites. Given the funding that we have, we can only have so many. So we do have to look at where they're located, if students in high priority neighborhoods are being served, and how best to work for them. So we'll definitely consider that, and happy to speak to you afterwards to know exactly where that is. It could be very much in line with the plan that is going to go forward in the summer. I just don't know which school it is right now. So happy to go with you afterwards and discuss. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Did you have a follow-up question, Trustee Hastings, or are you
I was
connecting with staff afterwards?
Madam Chair, I was just thanking the superintendent, and yes, we will have words on the school because the school has been in function as a summer school for many, many years. And then last year, it stopped being. And all I could hear was complaint, and I had no excuse for why it wasn't, other than there was no representation from the senior people at the school, being a principal, a vice principal. None of them were there. So nobody was able to say yes or no. I said, you should have gone to the trustee. He would have told you. But in any case, we will talk later if I can, please. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question, Trustee Hastings. And so I see there's no one else on the speakers list at this point. So we need a motion for recommending that the 2023 Summer Programs Report be received. I need a mover. Moved by Trustee Dawson, seconded by Trustee Chernos-Lynn, and e-scribe is open.
None in favor.
Thank you.
Volker Rotman in favor.
Still loading. King in favor.
Dose in favor.
Thank you. Vote in progress. I believe there it is. That's carried. So again, thank you to staff for that report. And we're moving to the next agenda item, which is Central Student Interest Programs Update. Who will be reporting on this?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to our committee this evening. Responding to Trustee Pay's motion at the June 14th board meeting, we are pleased to provide an update to the Program and Services Committee this evening. The report has tracked this committee as the Central Student Interest Program has moved from the writing of the policy to the implementation of admissions process and the programs in over 30 schools. I am joined this evening by System Superintendent Diana Pangiotopoulos and Centrally Assigned Principal Reiko Fuentes. I invite Diana to briefly highlight key elements of the report, and we, of course, will be pleased to answer any questions that you may have regarding the contents. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you. So I'm excited to share the updated information around our Central Student Interest Program, and we currently have nearly 2,700 seats that have been filled this year. We also, as you know, have 2 new arts programs at Woburn and Westview, both East and West, as well as the additional math, science, tech programs in 8 different schools, therefore for improving the geographical access to programs. Specifically, as an example, 4 programs were established in the East, where only 1 existed in the past at SATEC. In addition, of course, we have the 12 new local math, science, tech programs as well. As of June 2023, there were approximately 210 vacant seats in all of our programs, and 87 applicants were placed from June until September, leaving 187 empty seats in September. In this case, we also allowed students to, in the case of the 187 seats, this would have been a similar process that would have occurred, or a similar number that would have occurred prior to Policy 100. The difference is that there was no central tracking of this process. So now with the central tracking process, we are able to identify ways that we can increase access to programs, which was not possible prior to Policy 100. The positive result is that 60% of our applicants have now been seated as of today in their primary or alternate choices in grade 9, which of course is our largest intake year. And this is possible because of the increase in the number of programs that I mentioned earlier. Last year, just to give you an idea, by the end of this process, only 43% of our grade 9 students applicants were seated. Out of our 47 central interest programs, elementary and secondary, 38 of them have accommodated 70% of the applicants so far. And in 21 programs, we have seated 100% of the applicants who have indicated that this was their primary choice. So very exciting news this year. We are not quite done yet, the process, however, so just as a reminder. We, as part of this update, I just want to mention the expression of interest, and a change was made for the application process this fall with the expression of interest to better align with Policy 100, including expectations for the expression of interest. Applicants had to generate their own submissions. There were limitations in terms of length or video length or number of words. And they had to be connected to the Central Student Interest Programs. Examples included essays, expressions, application letters, samples of artwork, slideshows, videos, audio, claymation, etc. So what we also know through this process that we had an 11% change in the number of applications from grade 8 to grade 9. This year, and we expected this decrease because we know that last year was high attention across the city with media and the change in policy. So we did expect a slight decrease, which is what we received. I also want to highlight the wait lists. Trustees did receive a briefing in October in 2023. The waitlist expiration timelines are now aligned to meet the staffing process, recognizing class size, ministry reporting dates, and approvals by trustees, closing before March break for all programs. Schools with unfilled seats and local waitlists are able to offer seats to students from the central application process if they're attending that school and live in the area and attend. Unfilled seats in these programs prior to 100, Policy 100, were also the case. And so now, again, as I mentioned earlier, the central tracking has enabled us to put some things in place. For example, this year we expect better results because we have just one primary application process. We emailed all applicants explaining the nature of the programming and the requirement of changing schools to participate, because we realized through the data that students did not realize that, and therefore changed their minds. In addition, the expression of interest was added, And we have also increased with a small buffer of additional seats, especially in schools without local boundaries and local wait lists. Finally, our elite athlete program, which is now called the high performing athlete program, recognizes after our program coherence study that this is really not part of our central student interest program. It is not based on the interests of applicants, rather it's based on their high performance and training needs and the requirement of flexible timetables. So there is no wait list for these programs, differing from our elite athlete program at Birchmount, which is not the same, and this does continue to be part of our central student interest program. It's interest-based, it's focused on athletics, leadership, and healthy living. So that does continue, and happy to take any questions.
Do we have any trustees on the speakers list for this item? Any trustees online? Trustee Dawson?
Thank you for the report. Actually, I do want to express gratitude as to how thorough it was, and particularly the maps. I really found that helpful. I just have a question about wait lists. So when we provide our expected I believe it is expected enrollment in March and then actual enrollment in October, November. That's my understanding of kind of system-wide what we do. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that correct? Okay, that's correct. So if we have less than 10 spaces available on a wait list, could we not still project the enrollment that they would be full, given that we have hundreds of students waiting? Like, I'm not understanding why we cut off the wait list so quickly when we know we're going to fill the spots.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, the important piece here is where the students would be coming from. That's the key.
Okay, so whether they're from their local wait list or outside of that.
Through the chair, from other schools, that's the difference.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. That wasn't coming together for me. Thank you. Can you explain the sibling status?
There is no sibling status for central student interest programs.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. The next speaker on the list is Trustee Pei.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a list of questions. If I run out of time, please put me back to the list again. My first question would be regarding the use of local wait list and the seating from local population, section 2, page 54. I think this is a P100 program. Really want to eliminate geographic barriers. But user wait list, would that increase the geographic barriers? Does that go against our officially stated goal of policy reform?
Thank you for that question.
Through the chair, I don't believe it does. All students throughout the city have an opportunity to submit an application through the process. After all applications are processed through the random selection process, if there is a space or no space, if a random selection process is needed, then the lottery does take place. Therefore, it does allow full geographical access to programs. The local wait lists, similar to what happened in the past prior to Policy 100, is that students could move into the program that were already attending the school. The change is that students from other schools were not pulled in, thereby impacting staffing and enrollment. Thank you.
My question is a follow-up question. Is it a past practice as well, or is this new practice, by the way, regarding the local wait list?
The past practice was locally completed. The difference is that the list is now created centrally and then shared with schools. So that is a change because we now have a central process. Thank you.
You know what? I was school council co-chair at Claude Watson. Also, I'm a parent of Claude Watson School for the Arts for 10 years. I never heard of that as policy being applied to Claude Watson, with a local wait list. Can you explain to me why there change here?
I'm going to venture to guess that at Claude Watson that there was all seats were filled. Thank you.
Oh, through Madam Chair, I'm not sure that's a fact because for Claude Watson, October when Superintendent Diana Panjandopoulos is give the presentation, she mentioned that Clausen School for the Arts, there's a non-seat was unfilled up to date September. Is that correct?
I believe it was 8, but it may have been 9. Trustee Pay, I may not remember. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's okay, through Madam Chair. So why you say Claude Watson School is all seat are filled? So why is there discrepancy here?
Sorry, perhaps I'm not understanding the question. The number 8 or 9 was from this year. In previous years, I'm referring that there may not have been any empty seats or vacant seats at Claude Watson.
Okay, through Madam Chair. So I'm asking why there's difference here. I mean, in the previous year, there never been issue regarding staffing when all seats were filled. Why is this when we implement this new policy, all of a sudden we have non-seat unfilled for 60 spots? That's almost 15% of the total seats, which is also when we look at the number who applied to Claude Watson, there's like 290 students applied. That means there are another 250 or 240 students was left out on the waiting list. Why is now filled by those 240 students?
Just to clarify, I believe you're asking why the wait list was not used after it closed to
That's
fill
right.
those seats. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
That's right.
So as part of the process, recognizing that in the past there were occasions where principals would have pulled students in from other schools, the current process respects the ability to fill in schools with local wait lists. Claude Watson is not one of these schools because it does not have a local wait list. Therefore, those seats would have remained vacant. They are able to include those seats in a process for the following year, though.
And Trustee Pay, just to be reassuring you of our joint understanding that all of our seats are highly, highly treasured by our families, and where we have programs without local wait lists, we are watching very carefully the attrition. If students are originally seated and then choose not to attend, we want to be increasing the buffer of the students that we are registering in those locations so that we are making our best attempts to have no unfilled seats.
Okay, through Madam Chair, I have another question regarding the wait list. When I look at the data, Appendix B, there's 10 secondary schools which has at least 10% seat were unfilled. They are Central Technical School, around the 10%, ESA, more than 10%, Rosedale, more than 10%, and Birchmount Park Collegiate, 25%. Parkdale's Collegiate CI is 20%, Western State 20%, Archer King 13%, and Bloor CI, that's 12%. Danforth CTI, that's 10%. John Planey said 20%. And Claude Watson School for the Arts Elementary School, that's 15%. So I just don't understand. For those highly solid program, we're not even able to accommodate for the students who really want to get a program. So are we truly increase access to those students, really apply our policy equity to those students? Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, Chair, I do believe these questions have been asked and answered, and we would also echo back to some of the explanations that we provided to trustees during an information session in regards to the importance of following our policy and procedure in regards to honoring the timelines for waitlists. Thank you.
Okay, through Madam Chair. I think the board motion asks the staff to conduct feasibility study of extending the expiration of waitlist. The staff did not do any of such things. The expiration dates in 2024 are either the same or earlier than in 2023. The only reason I gave why centrally administered waitlists are closed on or around February 20 or replaced by the waitlist is the need to make a staffing decision at a proper time. The staffing argument clearly applies to non-popular programs like Lakeshore CI or Northview Heights, where the number of applicants is smaller than the number of seats. But it does not apply to popular programs like ESA, Rosedale, Claude Watson School for the Arts, or TOPS at Margano, where the number of applicants is much larger than the number of seats. For example, ESA had 514 applicants for 243 seats. If some students drop out or change their mind, there is a virtual certainty that their replacement for centrally administered waitlist will be possible. The staffing decision for such a popular program can be easily made based on assumption that all seats will be filled, just like in the past a few years practice before the P100s were applied. Currently, programs like ESA Rosedale, Victoria Park IB, and the Claude Watson School for the Arts lost equivalent of one class each, like 20 to 28 students due to attrition between February and September, and lack of local wait list.
Thank you, Trustee Petey. Your time has expired.
Could you put me back on the list, Madam Chair? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Trustee McLean.
Thank you, and through the chair. I'd like to talk a little bit about an answer that Associate Director Briscoe provided, and that an idea we discussed at the information session that was provided to trustees. And I'm going to describe it in a way that I know some are going to understand and some aren't, so I'm going to apologize for that in advance. But we discussed potentially an Air Canada model in which we would staff at, instead of 100%, potentially at 100, or not as much staff, but the spots, fill spots at a rate not necessarily of 100%, of 105% to alleviate potentially the whole issue around the wait list and spots not taken. And given that unlike a normal program where you can have children move in, students move into the catchment area, and if you run high, and then that would compound the problem, but people can't, for these programs, people can't move in. So I guess my question is around, have we adopted that policy, or have, so that we, when all push comes to shove, it works out pretty much like we'd like it to, or if actually all of the yeses we provide to students and families made us had to operate marginally high in certain programs, knowing that it couldn't get worse how are we, did we adapt that? Are we doing that? I know we talked about it. I'm curious to see the follow-up because that was one of the things that was discussed that would potentially deal with some of what's being discussed here.
Thank you for the question, Trustee McLean, and through the chair. We call this attrition, where students have been offered to be seated, accept, and then perhaps for familiar reasons, changing circumstances, they no longer attend. So the team has been analyzing the attrition rates historically for those schools that are the ones without boundaries where we are seeing this concern arise, and we have adopted a very cautious year one strategy of increasing the number of offers. We are approaching it cautiously, of course, because we don't want to be tripping staffing changes because of over-calculation on our part. So we will be watching the fill rates and the attrition very carefully in this first year of providing more seated offers than what appear on paper.
Thank you, and I'm personally encouraged by that. I do think that that was certainly a way to explore. So I'm encouraged that we're going to be moving in that direction, and I understand the cautious approach to that. But we also have the benefit of knowing that students can't arbitrarily be added to the program, so that there are certain controls in there that provide a safeguard that wouldn't traditionally at schools, because if children moved into the catchment area, you know, you're stuck with them, or they get to go and you don't have any control, and that can create challenges that wouldn't exist for most of this programming. I thank you for the response. I'm very encouraged by the modification in this direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee McLean. The next speaker is Trustee Arts.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I thank you, staff, for this report. It's a great update. Looking forward to more as we go forward. I just wondered if staff could go over the program expansions for the coming year, both central and local. I know I've had some back and forth. I know that I've approached staff individually about some of this, but I think it would be great to have an update here about, especially around the math, science, and technology programs. There's a lot more local ones coming online, and I really appreciate that, because I know at least one of the high schools in my region has always had essentially the equivalent of an MST program, or at least you know, what they've always offered in terms of their math and science focus is the same as what some of our central programs offer. But I mean, families wouldn't know that from looking at our central student interest program. So I wondered if staff could go through, especially with the local programs, like the decisions for where the programs are opening and what the plans are for those expansions.
Thank you, and for the question, and through the chair, I will be asking Diana to provide specific details, Trustee Arts, but I just wanted to use the opportunity to underscore our commitment to be increasing access to our central student interest programs, as they are highly valued by our families, and I know that you will be excited to hear the details that Diana will outline.
Thank you. And through the chair, so we are continuing to support the increase in math, science, and tech programs. So we know that they're in all of our schools, but focused our increase at the following schools: Cedar Brae, Downsview, Jarvis, Kipling, Lakeshore, Pearson, Leacock, and West Hill. And as part of our expansion, we are working with these schools as well as schools that have traditionally offered MST programs to build staff capacity to deliver these programs in ways that work well with their context and available resources. In addition to those central programs, we also have our new local MST programs at a variety of schools, again, increasing access geographically across the city in a variety of different schools, including Jackson, Thompson, East York, Etobicoke, Forest Hill, George S. Henry, Harvard, Malvern, North Albion, Sir Oliver Mowat, York Memorial, and York Mills Collegiate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The report said that the information session that we had in the fall, that the contents were attached to the report, but I went through all the appendices and I don't see it. And I thought that the information session we had on wait lists and the explanations that staff gave for the staffing requirements, like what our different deadlines are, the complexities of staffing requirements, the serious system impacts it has when a couple of students decide to leave a school to go into a program after the staffing pieces, and then how much more complicated that gets when it's a secondary school and you have to actually timetable as well. That I thought that the session was amazing. Lots of great information. I'd like to be able to share more of it. Then I couldn't find it in the report. So sorry if I missed it, but could you direct me to where that is?
Through the chair, we have summarized it. It was a lengthy presentation in October. The summary is on page 57. And the key factors really are our class sizes, and they must comply with legislation, of course, and limits. Non-compliance can result in penalties of the grants for student needs. And for example, in 23-24, that could have been up to $150 million. In addition, our staffing and reporting, our class sizes, our provincially mandated deadlines include October 31st and March 31st for secondary. Stable enrollment informs these staff requirements and are also established, and we obviously respect the collective agreements specific that are to the TDSB. In addition, noting that non-compliance is subject to an immediate withholding of payments up to 50% of the monthly transfer. So finally, approvals require the Board of Trustees, and as part of the budget process, which will be coming up shortly this spring. And so aligning our waitlist practices with staffing and reporting, as I've summarized today and is on page 57 of the agenda, does ensure that our that the process is as smooth as possible and that we respect key timelines. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. So this actually came up as a question about waitlists with elementary alternative schools and the process that's coming up there. So I will, because I'm now the trustee supporting our alternative schools advisory committee, I will circle back to you with Superintendent Chang for more information, because your explanation is excellent and I think would be great for helping to inform families about that waitlist piece and why it's such a problem to move students around mid-year or outside of designated time periods. Anyway, the explanation would be helpful there too. So thank you very much. That's all for me.
Thank you. So that was the end of your questions, Trustee Arts?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So we have Trustee Pei is the next speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go back my question again. The board motion asks the staff to conduct a feasibility study of extending the expiration of the wait list. The staff did not do so, any of those things, in this report. Regarding the expiration date in 2024, either the same or earlier than in 2023, the only reason given was a staffing issue. So, through Madam Chair, may I ask the staff, what's the past practice before this new P100 policy applied? Why we're not providing data for last years or last few years, see how those unfilled seats were dealt with, whether being filled or they've been left unfilled, how many left unfilled? Because we're talking about education here. For those really highly sought after program, like ESSA, Rosedale, Victoria IB, losing one class of those programs is very devastating for a lot of students who really desperately want to get those programs.
Thank you, Trustee Pei. So just clarification from staff. This sounds the same or similar to the question that was previously asked. Am I misunderstanding that?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I would want to make sure that Trustee Pei is clear that from staff, item C in the feasibility on extended wait lists was addressed, just to be so that the understanding is clear for all trustees, and is itemized on page 57 in regards to the reasons why staff did analyze very carefully what would happen if we enabled students to move from schools beyond, and that was the focus of the trustee information session, and just recapped. So I would agree with you, Chair, that that question was supported.
Thank you. Trustee Pei, do you have another question? Thank you.
I saw there's going to be some study. It's feasibility study, but there's just like a few paragraphs explaining why. Where's the study for? What's the study really for? What's the data? What's the data really support this? Do we call this study or just a description?
So sorry. Sorry, Trustee Pei, was that the end of your question?
Yeah, that's the end of my question. I have more questions. I'm just asking, like, the board, you wanted me to read, Madam Chair, do you want me to read the motion again? Or you have the motion with you? I can read the motion again for you. Motion.
I think we have the motion. We have the motion. Yeah.
It's number C, that the director present report on the feasibility of extending wait list. Where's the report for that? Where's the report regarding the feasibility?
Trustee Pei, for your question. So it's sounding to me that it's the same question. I'm going to put it to staff. I just want clarification. It sounds the same question.
Same question, but there's no answer though, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you, Trustee Pei. So you're asking the same question. I've heard the same question different ways a number of times, and staff has responded. Do you have another question? a different
No,
question.
Madam Chair, but I didn't get the answer for that question from the staff because this motion asking for a report on the feasibility, right?
So we're going to give staff an opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, to Trustee Pei. Trustee Pei, a feasibility study was conducted by staff. The numbers and the process was carefully reviewed. The report was presented to trustees on October the 2nd, 2023. It is summarized in writing on page 57 and discussed orally this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pei.
So what I'm asking is, through Madam Chair, I'm asking data. I'm asking data is what the data really show the past practice. The last few years before this new policy was applied. I want to see the data. I want to see the difference. Without that data, how can I compare?
Thank you, Trustee Pei. So again, I'm hearing the same question being put to staff multiple times in different ways. I'm going to give staff an opportunity to respond, but then I'm going to have to ask that we move on because we're asking the same question multiple times in different ways, respectfully. Could staff respond?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to Trustee Pei. Data was not collected for the information Trustee Pei is interested in, i.e. waitlists and so on, prior to Policy 100. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, through Madam Chair, I have another question regarding the program coherence studies. The treatment of elite athlete program remains different from other central student interest program. There is a different procedure, no random assignments. It is not clear why. Does that not seem to be due to a board decision? More interestingly, a special effort was exerted to understand the special nature of those programs, program coherence study. Why was such effort not undertaken for STEM or arts program? Why there's a different treatment?
Thank you. Could staff respond?
Thank you. We are in the midst of a variety of programs, coherent studies. The athletes program was the first one. And specifically, the athletic program is removed because of the external recognition of the athletes' level of competition and the requirements that they have. For example, a minimum of 15 hours of training that occurs through the school day. Thereby, these athletes, student athletes, are not able to attend classes. So there is quite a bit of difference in the programs. Similar, and I use Birchmount Park as the example, that exceptional athlete program is part of our central student interest because it is based on interest. There is no external group that has recognized a level of athleticism and competition at provincial, national and international levels that are formerly known as elite athletes program students would participate in. So it is a different type of program. Thank you.
No, okay, through Madam Chair, I hear that the staff says this is elite athlete program is very unique program. So why is ours is not unique program? Why IB is not unique program? Why is TOP is not unique program?
Thank you for the question. Could staff respond?
Thank you. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. The program specifically for our high-performing athletes does require a change in the school day. So for example, the athletes are in a training facility outside of the TDSB, not connected to the TDSB for half the day, and then they come to school for the other half of the day. So it does require a complete timetable, flexibility for these student athletes. That is very different than our arts programs where we have extraordinarily talented students, as well as our math, science, tech, leadership programs. All the learning is done as part of the regular school day at our schools. Thank you. I hope that clarifies.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. To be honest, I still don't understand. Why is the elite athlete program so different from other programs? Just because they have a training at other facilities, they'll be treated differently. So we're always talking about, like, the P100 program. I really try to address those underrepresented areas, especially based on race. Why is the elite athlete program is not addressing that part? Underrepresentation.
Thank you. Could staff respond?
Thank you. And in support of trying to explain something that is unusual, Trustee Pay, these are students who must have an accommodated schedule timetable in order for them to be maintaining their pursuit of athletic opportunities that are before them. We have Olympians who have very, very stringent, demanding schedules to be working with professional trainers as they prepare, for example, to be participating in the Olympics, that without having a unique timetable, they would have to be choosing. Their success in school and their credit accumulation would be at risk. So it is different than other students who are seeking access to our central student interest programs that we can provide through the day. We don't have Olympic trainers as part of our staff. That is not something that we provide. So this is our very best effort to be ensuring that our elite athletes succeed not only in their sports, but also in their academics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, staff. To be honest, I thank you for your effort to try to answer my questions, but I still don't understand the difference. Why we're treating an elite athlete program different from other arts and science program. Because as I understand, for some of the program like a TOPS or AB or MAX, those wonderful program, they also produce some world champions or world gold medals, silver medals, or bronze medals in computer science competition, in Olympic, math competition, in Olympic physics competition,
My
in Olympic
apologies,
chemistry.
Trustee Pay. My
Yeah.
apologies. Your time has expired a little while ago.
Okay.
So I did give you some extra time to finish your thought, but my apologies, your time has expired. So we have Trustee Chernos-Lynn.
Can you put me back to the list, Chair, please?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Through the chair, I was just going to take a stab at also explaining the programs we have for athletes who need a compressed day schedule. That's what I've always thought. That's how I've always thought of them. I actually have a daughter who went through one of these programs, so I just thought I might take a stab at explaining it. The programs we offer at schools like Northview Heights that offer a compressed school day has a different timetable, but doesn't offer special programming per se. So what happens is if you have an athlete who's competing at the provincial or national level, and they do a sport outside of school that takes place in the morning or the afternoon, you would get a timetable where you perhaps have your first class starting just after 10 o'clock, and then you have another class at lunchtime, and then you have 2 classes in the afternoon, and that's how you get your 4 classes. If you train in the afternoon, like my daughter did, she used to have to leave school at just after 1 o'clock to get to gymnastics, which she did 25 hours a week. There was not enough hours after school. She had to train that's when you trained. And so she would go to school in the morning, she'd do 2 classes, she'd take a class at lunch, and then she'd have 1 class after lunch, and then she'd leave. And that's how she got her 4 credits. So these programs she was taking the same classes as any other kid in a regular high school. It's just that her schedule accommodated her training, which was completely outside of TDSB, in the same way that it accommodated swimmers and people who did all sorts of other sports at the national and provincial level. And some of them do go on to the Olympics, not my daughter, but it's really a compressed day program is how I like to think of it. And it enabled her to stay in a high school program and not have to go to like a homeschooling kind of program or choose not to continue her training. So that's very different from the Birchmount program, which is like the arts programs that we're offering or the TOPS programs that we're offering for kids who have a great interest in sports, who want to do more about sports during the school day at our TDSB schools. That's not what kids in the program at Northview Heights are doing. They're just trying to get their geography, all those things they need to graduate high school, but also pursue sports completely outside of TDSB. So I think that, I hope I have explained maybe just from my personal experience how and why that differs and why something like Birchmount is treated the same way as the arts programs and as the tech programs. It's because those are kids who are coming to us to learn about those things and delve deeply and have a passion for, be it sports, arts, tech, you name it. We've got the specialty program for kids, as opposed to these other ones, which are not treated as part of the central because they're really just accommodating a timetable so that kids can graduate from high school.
Thank you for sharing those personal experiences to give some insight to this topic, Trustee Chernos-Lynn. So we have Trustee Pei on the speakers list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have another question I want to ask you is there any data regarding the dropouts post October? How many vacancies we have until December 2023? Does staff have any data for this?
Thank you for the question. Could I have staff respond?
Thank you. We are not at this time collecting that data. The school year is not finished, and we are recognizing that the experiences of students, and we're supporting principals and superintendents to work together to make sure that the experiences of the students for the first time this year with the new policy is exceptional. So the energies are focused there, as well as the professional learning of staff. So we have not collected that data. We will be looking at those types of things when we do a fulsome review after the full year is completed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you again. I have another question regarding the data. It should be really presented the way that compares the past a few years regarding the admission, based on race, based on demographic. Does the staff do the staff have those data, from a previous year, compared this year regarding the racial data?
Thank you for the question. Could staff respond?
Just to clarify, Trustee Pei, you're asking for current demographic data?
I'm asking, yeah, it's not only current demographic data. I also want to know the data in the years before that. So because we want to measure how this new policy can be successful or not, right? I think the board policy, we have a timeline to review the program, may consider some changes in the following year. So I want to know how successful the program are. So I want to know where basic data regarding this policy really focus on, which is race. Okay, so I want the racial data, from previous years and compare this year. Thank you.
So previous years' data has been provided through Trustees Weekly. In the past, we are still compiling data through the census for this year. There has not been data in the past specifically around achievement in the formerly known specialized programs or the central student interest programs.
If I may add, Trustee Pei, you may remember just reiterating here while it's on the floor that staff are developing a guide and a protocol for us to be thinking about how we do identify the priority groups and grounding that in the Ontario Human Rights Code, as well as what we are seeing change in our programs to be making sure that we are meeting the expectations outlined in the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee.
Okay, yeah, Madam Chair, I have another question regarding the measure and the performance of this program. Through you, I want to ask staff, there's a possibility we can do some research on how successful the program are based on test scores and or based on dropout rates.
Thank you. Could I have staff respond?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, we know that this policy is on a review cycle, as well as a report has been asked to come back to the board after a period of time. And I believe that is 2024, if my memory serves correct. So the success of the program and our students will be considered using a broad range of matrices and the elevation of student experience and voice, as well as parents. So certainly trustees can be looking forward to a fulsome review.
Thank you. Trustee Pei?
Okay. All right. So I have another question regarding this year policy about expression interest. How that differ from last year? Can staff explain to me through you, Madam Chair?
That sounds like the question that was previously asked. So do you have?
No, Madam Chair, I didn't ask this question. I'm asking expression of interest. This year's policy. There is, let me go over here. Page 50. In the November 2023 CSIP application cycle, an expression of interest was included as a requirement to better align with the language in the student interest program policy P100. Because expression interest as far as I know, is what it was not was not implemented in the previous year cycle. Am I correct?
Thank you for the
Through
clarification. Thank you. Could staff respond?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I refer Trustee Pay to page 56, Section 4.
Yeah, I do read that, but I'm asking whether this expression interest was evaluated or not.
No, Trustee Pay, that was part of the expectation for the development of this process and the expectation of the board. Thank you.
So, through Madam Chair, if the expression interest is not really evaluated, how can we know those expression really is active interest? How can we differentiate between some student writing "me want a school" or some student like they provide arts work that being worked through months of hard work?
Thank you, and through the chair. Trustee Pay, the last paragraph on page 56 with the nuggets moving on to page 57 explain where staff redirected expressions of interest to make sure that they were fulsome. And I believe in the last presentation that staff presented to the board, we talked about the concerns about evaluating expressions of interest and the barriers they provided to students. And I believe that conversation and explanation was fulsome at that time. Thank you.
Okay, through Madam Chair, could you ask the staff to repeat their part of conversation so I can understand more?
Thank you. Does staff have a response?
Thank you, and through you. Briefly, through you, Chair, when we evaluate expressions of interest, we introduce bias, we introduce barriers to students. We see students who have had access to experience in their lives that puts them at disadvantage, or puts them at advantage, pardon me, to other students. The direction in the policy was for staff to enable equitable access as much as possible for students. It was very clear that any evaluation of the expression of interest would be counter to that direction. We also were responding to trustees asking to ensure that an expression of interest was present. And we believe that we have fulfilled the expectation of trustees in a much more aligned way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Through Madam Chair, I have another question regarding the art task force. I think some parents mentioned me that the board committed to build up arts force through consultation with the student, with the parents. Can staff answer me is like whether that been followed up yet?
Sorry, Trustee Pay. We had. Could you repeat that last part? We're just. I don't think we heard clearly that the question you're asking.
Oh, you know what is there? Some parents asked me. They were informed by the board. Summer is like in May 2022, saying that there's going to be arts task force formed. By the parents group to, gave a consultation, to the board regarding the arts program. I just don't know whether there's a follow-up for this.
Thank you, and through the chair, I will start and Principal Reiko Fuentes will also be able to support that answer, because it's a little bit, some of it happened prior to my arrival. So we are working with staff through the arts department to ensure that staff have grounded, strong foundation in the arts at all of our new opening schools, as well as our schools that have been in place for many years. So those programs are underway in terms of learning. In fact, one of them, another session is next week, if I have it right. And so the learning does continue. I will also ask Principal Fuentes to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, the work that's being done, being led by our arts department, working with the school leaders in each of our arts programs, taking a critical look at the curriculum that is being taught, that's being reviewed, to ensure that we're looking at this through a lens of equity where students see themselves valued and reflected in the materials that are being taught and in the ways that they are able to express themselves in their programs is a key part of this review and reflection on the past arts programming, and as we move into the future in the next steps of our arts development. So that professional learning where key staff from each of our arts-focused programs are involved is a key piece of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Pei, did you have any?
Yeah, so, okay, through Madam Chair, thank you. I have follow-up question is like, so the staff is going to continue that part of work and have a community input, and so the parents have a request access to this this input.
It sounded more of a comment than a question. Staff, I don't think they're clear. Are you asking if there will be consultation?
Yeah, I just want to ask the staff through Madam Chair is how this arts task force is going to be formed? What's their plan for this one?
Thank you, Trustee Pei. So I'll allow staff to respond, and you unfortunately are out of time on the clock, so I apologize for that, but I'll give staff an opportunity to respond.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, as we always do through all of our policy creation, our community, parents, advisory committees are consulted as part of policy development, and that was completed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Trustee Pei. Your time has expired, unfortunately, and we're at the end of the speakers list, so I'll ask one of our committee members to recommend that the report be received.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Trustee Pei. Moved by Trustee King, seconded by Trustee Chernos Lynn, and we'll vote on e-scribe. Okay, so we're going to do it voting by hand on this one. E-scribe is not coming up. So Trustee King in favor, Trustee Chernos Lynn in favor.
Dawson in favor.
Trustee Dawson in favor. The trustees on the committee online.
Trustee Resmani in favor.
Is Trustee Rothman there? Trustee Goes? And Trustee Williams in favor. That carries. Thank you. So we have the final agenda item that was moved to the end of the agenda. The Alternative Schools Community Advisory Committee report. Do we have the CAC Chair, Sandra A. Marie, online?
Yes, hello.
Welcome, and thank you for your patience in waiting for your agenda item to appear.
Thank you for taking, for pushing it back. I had a conflict with the timing, and I did want to be here. So thank you very much. I've just completed my coughing fit just on time for the presentation. So I thank you all very much for taking the time to listen to ASAC's recommendations. I wanted to briefly just go over what I understand as being a main concern that ASAC wants to bring up at this particular meeting. Where we want to talk a little bit more about the review of the admission process. And there have been a series of promises of reviews and consulting that have been made to the ASAC committee that simply haven't taken place. So what ASAC has recommended is that the TDSB act in good faith to fulfill its commitment to deep engagement, listening, and a full review. Such full reviews would include the 2023-24 process and plans for the 2024-25 process, including a detailed review of the 2023-24 process and the TDSB's plan to ensure errors do not occur again, including a review of the video of the placement process and the procedure document, which was agreed between TDSB and the vendors. The exact step in the process where the errors occurred and the reasons it occurred, and the impact of the error and remedy versus the intended outcomes of the plan process. We go on to highlight that we'd like to review barriers to the process, which did unfortunately impede the goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion last year, and a review of the process in relation to the TDSB's obligation under Section 6.21 of Policy P062 to prioritize First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students outside of the centralized random selection process, in keeping with Truth and Reconciliation. So in the report that you have here, if you were to scroll down to Part B, the staff supplementary information, basically, it seems to say that based on ASAC's feedback, that these particular things will be implemented. However, there has been no review update for us. We have not been consulted on a series of issues, and there is, I think what ASAC is hoping that the board will do is actually, provide some understanding of accountability. And when we speak of accountability, we're not asking to point a finger. I think that there is, from what I understand, I have to say I'm new to any of this at all. This is my first year as co-chair, and I'm part of the elementary school. I'm the elementary school co-chair for ASAC, and my son is enrolled for his second year at Alpha. And what I see is that there is a lot of frustration coming from parents where they're asking questions and they just don't have any answers. And then there are public statements being made that ASAC or TDSB is consulting with ASAC surrounding their review, surrounding the process, and even about the implementation of the centralized process itself. So I'm hoping that the committee, I guess itself, can speak to what are we as ASAC, what can we expect from this year's process, and why haven't we been given any meaningful responses, any meaningful why haven't any of our very meaningful recommendations been taken into consideration and why haven't we received any feedback on exactly what's going on? I have, and just one more question, is it a requirement that every alternative school is part of the centralized system?
Thank you, Ms. A. Marie, for those questions. And we have the report in front of us. Are there any? Thank you. If we could have staff speak to this.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'll begin, and then System Superintendent Chang will follow up. Thank you for the comments with respect to the elementary alternative schools process. We know that this particular process created a great deal of controversy, and the first place that I want to start off with is that we know that an error was made. We have acknowledged that an error has been made, and we have worked since that error was made in order to address the specific concerns that led to the error, in order to identify those groups that were in fact adversely impacted, and then in order to make amends in order to address the specific concerns, and last but certainly not least, to make sure that this particular error does not happen again. That was a commitment that our director made back when this took place. Since
Excuse me, Ms. A. Marie.
I'm not allowed to speak.
I'm going to ask that we allow staff to respond fully, and then we'll continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Once again, through the chair, since the error took place, what have we done? What has been the actual review process? One of the things that we know based on the nature of this error was that there are many groups that were affected and many groups that needed to be heard in order for us to identify what happened and what specific actions we needed to take as a board in order to remedy. The first group that we wanted to engage in conversation was ASAC, because they represent the parents, and parents and students were adversely impacted. We wanted to and needed to hear their particular voice. And so part of what we engaged in was we did engage in conversations starting with April the 21st, meeting May the 29th, June the 19th, and July the 5th. Each of those ASAC meetings were meetings that I would say 80 to 90% of the time was spent discussing the error and what went wrong and how do we address it, and seeking information and concern and questions from the parent community and students, because there were students on some of those meetings. Then we also needed to engage with our vendors, because we identified that it was a technical error. So we went back, and on a regular basis since that day, we've been engaging in conversations with our vendors to make sure that we get it right this time around. Because we know that getting it wrong is just not something that we as a board want to do. We have engaged with staff, our alternative principals on a monthly basis. We've heard from them about what they felt needed to be done at the school level around the application process in order to address what has taken place. We have met on a bi-weekly basis with with an advisory committee that consists of some of the key principals that are working through this process each and every day once the applications have gone through. We have gone through and met with the office administrators, which came out of ASAC as a recommendation, because ASAC had identified that, hey, the frontline individuals that are actually dealing with the actual application process are the OAs. So part of what we embarked on was meeting with the OAs to find out, how can we do things differently? How can we do things better? How can we do things right? We've also continued to consult with our human rights and our equity staff, Because as has been outlined, we want to make sure that every student feels that they are accepted and belong within our elementary alternative programs. So we've been consulting with human rights since day one, and we've been consulting with equity since day one, so that we incorporate that into the process to ensure equity for all of our students. We have gone through and meet on a regular basis with the staff from IT, because we outlined at the beginning of this. This was a technical error. We've been meeting with IT, who's also meeting with the vendor, to make sure that we're going to be able to deliver on what our communities expect. And last but certainly not least, we embarked on a comprehensive grade-by-grade, school-by-school analysis to understand how the error actually affected equity-deserving students, and to determine how do we address it and remedy. And based on what we've placed on our website around elementary alternative schools and the process that took place, we placed on our website so that our community and our parents know that at the end of the day, based on our admission process, our expectation, what should have taken place, was that approximately 46% of underrepresented students should have gained entry. Based on the number of seats that we added seats in those schools in order to address it, so that we in fact exceeded the number of spots for underrepresented students that we initially were supposed to. We understand, though, we've still caused harm, and we are happy to continue to work with all groups that we've listed above in order to make it right and ensure that all of our students are successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. So at this point, I'm going to ask if trustees have any questions of clarification. So Ms. A. Marie, what's happening next is that I'm calling on trustees if they have any questions of clarification with regard to your report. Thank you.
Can I add something before we move past?
So we will get back around, but at this.
I didn't realize that I was finished making my report, so I would just like to finalize what I was doing. Is that okay?
Have you finished your report? Have you finished making your report?
No, I had a few questions because I wanted to make sure that the recommendation that we want to make is either something that they have done or haven't done, that has been done or hasn't been done. So what is really important for ASAC is that we are presenting a recommendation for a full review, and we want the trustees, we're looking for an approval of that recommendation. I hope that's clear.
Thank you. So on the speakers list at this point, I have Trustee Chernos-Lynn. Questions of clarification?
So through the chair, let me just ask the chair a question, because are you asking if we have questions of clarification for the committee chair, the committee co-chair, or are you asking, because that's not what I have. I have ideas about what I want to do with the motion that's been suggested to us, the recommendation coming forward. So I'm not sure where we're at in this process.
At this point, we're discussing the report. If there are any questions of clarification, that's where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can come back to me when we're at the next stage, I guess.
Thank you. We have Trustee Arts is next on the speakers list. Trustee Arts?
Sorry, forgot to unmute myself. Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, Just want to say thank you to Trustee Salmon for the review of the update. I will just, I only just joined ASAC, so I was not at the meeting for when this motion was crafted, so I can't speak to what happened in that meeting. For the one meeting I was at and some following interactions, I will say that going forward, in the spirit of this motion, that ASAC wants to be consulted and involved and I think perhaps more clearly defined how be able to more clearly define what consultation means to them, what meaningful consultation means to them, and have that interaction in the process to feel confident. The committee, the parents that come, feel confident in how things are going to proceed as we move forward. So that's just my sense on where things are at. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Trustee Arts. Trustee Cherno-Swin?
Okay, so there's no further questions of clarification then. I think Trustee Dawson may.
Trustee Dawson?
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to say thank you so much to Miss Amory, and I'm going to ask you, is that the correct pronunciation of your name?
It is.
Amory. Thank you, Miss Amory, for making your first delegation to the committee. I know as a former co-chair myself, it can be a bit nerve-wracking for the first time, so I just wanted to say thanks so much. And I have a question for staff. So based on what Associate Director Salmon just said, it sounds like we have ongoingly been having the discussions that are laid out in this motion. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, staff has been engaging with different community parents in order to address this particular concern. We welcome ASAC's input, and I would ask System Superintendent Chang to outline how ASAC's recommendations have in fact made it into this year's process. They have had a real positive influence, and there were really good ideas that they've put forward that we've incorporated. Have we incorporated all? No, we have not incorporated all, but we've definitely incorporated many because the ideas came from the right place. It was from the heart, and it's parents who care deeply about their children's education. So we have definitely worked to try and incorporate those particular recommendations, and we will continue to do that because it's important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, we spent a significant amount of time, especially in the July meeting with ASAC, whereupon we went through all the various parts of the process. And in that time, they were able to provide us with some recommendations that you see now reflected in Part B of the recommendation. And just to note, if I may quickly go over them for you, through their recommendations, a suggestion, we certainly have now, we're putting in 2 school choices that are ranked. Last year, one of the things that we did do was we randomized the 2 school choices. ASAC felt very strongly that we should be providing choices 1 and 2, so we have gone ahead and followed that recommendation. Secondly, we then looked at the language of my classes, of the process for greater clarity. So we changed some of the language so that it's hopefully easier to understand, although it is unfortunately still wordy because we wanted to provide as much information as possible. We did make some revisions to the information that's on the website and application form. There was also a request that we inform applicants that childcares be also on the website so that families can make some decisions based on childcare. There is no direct linkage because it is a central program for entry into childcare, but it was important for families to at least know that childcare might be a possible consideration. Onwards, there was also a consideration that we continue to offer spots where spots are available at non-entry grades. Trustees, just to remind you that most of the spots available are at junior kindergarten in the schools where they have JK, or grade 7 when the schools are grade 7 and 8. But through principals' input as well as ASAC, we continue to follow the model where we consult with the principals, where we, during this enrollment time, to set the number of spaces available where we can, at grades 2, grade 3, grade 6, what we consider the non-entry grades. Because in other programs, that isn't the case, but we wanted to make sure that we could try to offer that. And then, of course, we also wanted to maintain the sibling priority. That was still something that that ASAC wished to continue because they wanted to keep families together. And one of the other important things that we were not able to do in the first year was remove gender from the application form. That was a technical piece that we weren't not able to address, but through asking again, it was something that was made possible. So those are the significant changes that we were able to do because of the important feedback that we received from ASAC. Thank you.
I would really like to respond to both Peter and Trustee Salmon.
Excuse me, Ms. Amory.
I understand, but I really would like a chance to
Ms.
say
Amory,
something.
I'm just going to explain just a few of the ground
I
rules.
understand how it works. I just want to make sure that
I appreciate I appreciate that you've come and are speaking to your report, but I need to chair this meeting in a way that allows our trustees to speak, and I'll come back to you for final comments. I will allow that. But I'm going to ask that you not interrupt the speakers or myself. And as the chair, I'll recognize you to come and speak before before trustees of the committee make a recommendation on what's in front of us. So at this point, I think we're still on Trustee Dawson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I really appreciate your responses, Associate Director Salmon and Superintendent Chang. I think it's extremely important for committees to understand that they are advising the board, and we take their recommendations under serious consideration, but are sometimes not able to always accommodate all. I think that's really a key piece for the community advisory committees to understand. And as a former member of one, it's sometimes difficult to swallow when you're advocating for a particular cause, but we do take these recommendations very seriously as a board, and I think that Superintendent Chang has given some excellent examples of how we have accommodated many of the requests of the committee.
Thank you, Trustee Dawson. So the next speaker on the list is Trustee Chernos-Lynn. No, you're not on.
I would like to make a recommendation. So before we get to the stage where it's just trustees dealing with this, if you indicated you wanted to give the co-chair of the Community Advisory Committee a chance to make a final statement, go ahead.
Thank you, Trustee Chernos-Lynn. So, Ms. Amory, I'll give you an opportunity to make final comments on what you've presented in your recommendation. Just to be clear, it's not an opportunity to ask further questions, but you can speak to your report before we go back to trustees. Please go ahead.
Well, before speaking directly to the report, I do want to speak to what Trustee Dawson, Salmon, and Superintendent Superintendent Chang said. And I think it's really it's belittling to believe that we, as a volunteer advisory committee, believe that we are part of the process in such a significant way that we believe that we are moving things forward. Now, that said, part of what we are asking for in this recommendation is that there be some accountability to the review without it being said that two things. We are being used in publicly, the ASAC is being used publicly and in this recommendation and in this meeting to sort of be the consultant for what ASAC, for what the advisory committee should have done last year. A lot of these things that they're taking up as recommendations from ASAC are standard. They should never have been things that were left out of the process in the first place. And secondly, if you want us to believe and remember that we are just advisors and that we are not writers of processes and procedures, then don't quote us, then don't quote your consultation of us as though we somehow hold accountability for how we move forward in the next year. So you can't speak out two sides of your mouth with this, right? You can't be so excited to say, oh yeah, we're doing great things and we are doing it because ASAC said we should do it, but it was already a responsibility that the TDSB should have overseen from the beginning. It's not something that should have happened in the first place, and now making us accountable for how we move forward is problematic. It is absolutely problematic. So I also, I know I'm not allowed to ask questions, but please understand that none of the recommendations that the superintendent has put here in supplementary information are anything that we had particularly directly requested. They were concerns that came out of the fact that the process itself was already problematic from the beginning. And the outcome is that you now see these recommendations that every single one of them should have been there from the beginning. It should not be something that we should be a part of recommending. And I think ASAC is very upset about the fact that we even had to go through that process. And in terms of accountability and consultation, it is absolutely the responsibility of Trustee Salmon and Superintendent Chang.
Just a correction, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's Associate Director Salmon. He's one of the senior staff. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's probably an important point because staff.
I mean, it's a little hypocritical, but it's okay.
Thank you. My apologies.
Yes, and I apologize for mischaracterizing. Assistant,
Associate Director Salmon?
Sorry?
Associate Director Salmon.
Associate Director Salmon, my apologies, Associate Director Salmon. That, you know, there is a lot of talking being done, but there is no demonstration of exactly what is being done. The accountability that ASAC is looking for is not for you to point a finger or for you to just talk us to death. The accountability that we're looking for is that we now have a little bit more transparency and visibility into a process that was disastrous last year. It was a big problem. And so when we ask for a review, we want to be able to see what's happening. Because if we are consulting and you have 8 recommendations that we were able to raise that should have already been part of the process, I guarantee that we as people who, as ASAC, can also possibly help to ensure that this process is going to move forward in a way that we can stand behind. But as I see it right now, I don't agree that these are recommendations that we have been specifically asking for. I think that it's been lost at this point as to what exactly ASAC has been asking for. And as I've said more than once so far, these are things that should never have been omitted from the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Marie, for coming to this committee this evening and presenting the report from the Alternative Schools Community Advisory Committee. As was noted by Trustee Dawson previously, the work of volunteers, the hours that go into participating in our community advisory committees is very much appreciated. And I appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us this evening. Thank you. So at this point, we're going to Trustee Chernow-Slin.
So I think we've had, I do understand from the committee chair, co-chair of the committee, that this has perhaps been a frustrating experience today, but I do want to acknowledge that, the work that your committee has done has been important. It is valued by trustees. And to Superintendent Chang's explanation, there was substantial steps working together with the committee, as well as steps that staff took separate from that, that are moving us in the right direction, I do believe. I was together with with the past co-chair last year when we actually did try to address some of the concerns of moving students, and I did get to watch. I was one of the onlookers watching that process with a co-chair from the committee. So, there's always learning for us to do, and there's much value in working together to move forward. And so with that in mind, I do have a recommendation that I would like to move. And it is, I'm wondering, I've sent it to staff, so I'm wondering if that could be put on the screen. And my recommendation would be that the following be referred to staff to report back to and work collaboratively with the Alternative Schools Community Advisory Committee on continued implementation updates of the Elementary Alternative Schools Central Application Process as appropriate. And so I'm glad to, I think it's up on the screen. If we could just scroll down to where the recommendation would be. Oh, can we move up? There it is, those first two lines. And so we need a seconder. I believe there is, I think, Trustee.
So moved by
Trustee Volker-Rotman will second.
Thank you. And I believe it will come up on eScribe for the vote. Just waiting for it to load on eScribe. So it looks like it's not coming up on eScribe. If we could just vote by, you did? Okay, Trustee Williams in favor.
And King in favor.
Volker-Rotman in favor.
Chernow-Slin in favor.
Have all the trustees on this committee voted?
I don't think this is the right recommendation.
Trustee Shan, are you there?
That's not what's here.
Okay. Are we going to have the result on eScribe? There it is. So that carries. Thank you. So as we have come to the end of our agenda for this evening. If I could have a mover and seconder for adjournment. Trustee Chernos Lynn. Trustee King, and all in favor, just a raise of the hand or an aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for attending this evening. Have a good night.